how to create an interactive, modern-looking dashboard here in Excel, step by step from scratch, using as the start point a data set, and then we can move on to the pivot tables, and then we can create the dashboard in Excel. So I hope you guys, this video can help you out, because we're gonna see step by step how can we create a dashboard in Excel from the beginning. As you can see here, we have the slicers, or in other words, we have the options that we can click within each one of these buttons that we have, and select a specific region to see the data, to analyze the data that you have. And then here to the right, we have a column chart in Excel to see the total quantity sold per product. Here to the right, we have a bar chart that automatically organize the product that are sold the most quantities and the one that are sold the least. The next one, we have an area chart that can show the total sold per month. And here we have January, February, March, and on and on. And to the right, the last one, but not least important, we have the average margin per product, a dummy chart, where we can see each one of the slicers and compare the area of the slicer or the size of each one of the slicers against each other. And that way we can make analysis in Excel throughout this dashboard. So let's find out how can we create this interactive dashboard in Excel step by step from this data set. Let's go. Before we get started creating the dashboard in Excel, I think it's very important to have a data set, because from the data we can create the dashboard itself. And here I have informations such as order ID, date, brand name, product name, quantity, total cost, total price, margin, and also the customer name and the region. And of course, if you want to download this Excel file, you can do so. Just clicking the link in the description down below, 100% free. This is a sales report, as we can see. And it doesn't matter if you want to use a different data, because it's gonna work in the same way. The step by step is gonna work. Now that we already have here data that we want to use in the dashboard, we can move on to the second step, that is to transform this data set into a table in Excel. I think a table in Excel has a lot of benefits. One of those benefits is whenever you update the data, or whenever you go to the last row, for example, this one right here, and then you continue to input new data, new rows, all those new rows are going to automatically be included in the table itself. So this is one of the benefits. That way your dashboard is gonna always be automatically updated. And another benefit to use a table in Excel is because we can change the design and the layout of the data. But okay, let's click here within the data in anywhere, and then I go to insert and then table. With this new window, I can select my table has headers, okay, and then click OK. That's it. So now we have a table in Excel. The second step is done. Now we can move on to the third step, that is to create the analysis that we need in order to create the dashboard. And to create the analysis, of course, we can use functions and formulas. Those functionalities in Excel can help us. But I think use functions and formulas in Excel is going to require some dexterity in comparison to the pivot tables, because we can use this tool, that is the pivot table, and this can help us a lot. So let's create here a pivot table in Excel. Basically, they can reorganize, slice, and dice the data. So if you want to make analysis such as what is the total price per region, you can do easily with the pivot tables. What is the total price, or what is the average margin per product per month, for example? You can use as many as criteria as you need to, and the pivot table can help us. So let's click here, insert, and then pivot table. I want to use a new worksheet, and then I'm going to click OK. Simple as that. So as you can see, now I have sheet 1, where I have my data set, and I can also click here with the right click, and then go to rename. This one is going to be my data set, enter. And the second sheet that I have here, I can click, hold, and drag to the right, just to reorganize, change the order, and then right click again, I go to rename. This one is going to be my pivot table, or the analysis, enter. To the left, we have the first pivot table. Here to the right, basically we have the options that we can use in the pivot table, and those options are matching with the columns that we have in the table. Order ID, date, brand, and on and on. Here down below we have the fields, filters, rows, columns, and values. Those fields are going to help us setting the information that we want to see in the pivot table. So let's start with the first analysis. Let's say I want to see each one of the products that I have in each one of the rows. I can take here the product, click, hold, and drag, and drop in over the rows. Just drop here. Now each one of the rows are being represented by a different product. And let's say I want to make a different analysis here. I want to see what is the total sold per product. So that way I can take here the total price that corresponding to the total sold, click, hold, and drag and drop here and release in the values. And as you can see now, in the values, we have a sum, an addition of the total price. And in the pivot table itself, it's done. It's already working. Some change that we can do here is the grand total is basically an addition of all those previous values in the previous rows that we have. Maybe we can read it off this information because I don't think I'm going to use it. So right click here in the pivot table, and then I can go to pivot table options. And with this new window, I can select total and filters, and I can unmark those options, show grand total for rows and for columns. Another thing that I can do is in layout and format, I can, let's say, auto fit column width on update. No, I don't want to keep this option, so I'm gonna read it off and then OK. As you can see, now we have a more clean look in the pivot table, and we can also select all those data values and then go to the home tab and put everything here with the $sign like this. Now it's better. To create the second pivot table, we can do all those steps again. Come back to the table and then insert pivot table and on and on and on. But to make sure we can create this dashboard as faster as possible, I basically can select everything that I have as the pivot table, the first one, and then Ctrl+C to copy in a row underneath, Ctrl+V to paste. And with this new pivot table, the second one, I can go to the settings and I can see here a different analysis. So let's say I don't want to see the sum of total price anymore. I can click here and then remove field. Now I want to see the margin. I can take the margin, click, hold, and drag and drop in the values. As you can see here, I have a sum of the margin. Maybe it's making no sense because let's say as the margin, maybe it can be in the range from 5% up to maybe 40%. So it's making no sense to add up those values. What makes sense here is to have an average of the margin. So I can change, instead of using a sum of the margin, I can click here in this option, go to value field settings, and then I can choose average. Okay, now we have the correct answer. Let me select everything here and then change the format to the percentage one, like this. Yeah, now we're done. The second pivot table is done. Now we can create the third one. The third one, I want to see the quantity sold per product. So let me select again the last pivot table, the second one, Ctrl+C, 2 rows underneath, and then Ctrl+V. With this third pivot table, instead of having the average of margin, I can click and then remove field. I can use instead, let's say, the quantity. Just drop here in the values. And we have a sum, an addition of the quantity. And this is exactly what I need. Let me select the values to change the format. Instead of using percentage, I can use just numbers itself. Click here in the values, percentage, and then number. Okay, like this. Yeah, now we're done. I can see 3 very important informations: the total price, the total sold per product, the average margin per product, and also the quantity sold per product. Now the last analysis that I can create here maybe is using the months, the total sold per month. So let me take here the first pivot table, Ctrl+C, one row, one column apart, just skip one row, one column, sorry, and then Ctrl+V to paste the fourth pivot table. And with this pivot table right here, I can read it off both of those options, remove field, and also, okay, the sum, the total sold. Yes, okay, so I'm gonna keep here the sum of the total price because I'm gonna use it. And instead of using the product, now I want to use the date. Let me click here in the date, click, hold, and release within the rows fields. But something very important here is, as you can see, I have the date itself, the days, and the months. If I check in the pivot table itself, I can click in this plus sign, and that way I can see with more preciseness within the data. So I can have January, and then January 1st, a lot of values in the January 1st, in the January 2nd, and on and on. But instead of have all those, let's say, this specificness within the pivot table, I want to have only the months. So I can go here to the rows, click in the days, and read it off. Click in the date, and then read it off. And just keep the months, because it's the only information that I want to keep here. And yeah, now we're done. Let me select the column D and E, and in between one column and another, I can click, hold, and drag to the right. Make sure both columns are in the same size, and we can also increase the thickness of those columns. We're done with the analysis. Now we can move on and create the dashboard that we're gonna use here in Excel. Let me click here in this plus sign, and with this new sheet, I can right click and then go to rename. This one is gonna be the dashboard. Enter. Okay, now we're gonna select some columns here, such as the column A, and then I'm gonna press and hold the Control key, and then select the column E. And also I want to select the column N, and also the column T, like this. So I select a couple of different columns. I did that because we need to change the size of those columns, because that way it's gonna be much easier to place the charts or to place the areas that we need to create in order to make the visuals for the dashboard. Now let me right click over one of those columns, and then I go to the column width, and instead of using 8 and 43, I'm gonna use 2, and then okay, enter. That's it. So now we set here a couple of different columns with different size. Now we can place the charts. So to create the charts, we can go back to the pivot table to be able to analyze better and to visualize, of course, the data that we have, and then see what is the best chart to use here. I want to start with the last pivot table, the fourth one, as we have January, February, March, April, May, and on, the months. I think it's a good option to use here, a line chart or also an area chart. So let me click within this pivot table, and then I go to insert, and then I'm going to choose here the area chart. Of course, you can use different types of charts, such as the column chart or even the bar chart. But I think the area chart is a really good option to use here. Now we can go to the first pivot table, and as we have the total sold per product, maybe we can use the bar chart, because the bar chart, let's say it can represent the top 10 or the top 5, the most selling products, the product that sell the most and sell the least. So we can see here the largest bar at the top and the smallest one at the bottom. And that way we can create a really good chart to visualize this data. But in order to be able to create this chart, we're going to need to reorganize, to sort the data in a different way. We're going to need to put, let's say, the largest value at the top and the lowest one in the bottom. Of course, it's almost there, because the largest one is 57,000, the lowest one is 7,000. But here in between, we have a couple of misinformation, let's say. So we need to organize it. Let's click in the filter, and then I can go to more sort options. Here I can choose the first A from A to Z, and then I want to use as criteria sum of the total price. Then okay. As we can see, we basically have the opposite, like I said. So I have the lowest one at the top and the largest one at the bottom. I know that's in opposite order, but when we create the bar chart, is gonna work perfectly. So let me click within this pivot table and then insert. I want to use here a bar chart like this one. Okay, and as you can see, now it's perfectly working. The largest value is at the top, the lowest one is at the bottom. This third chart that we can create here now using the second pivot table can be the average margin. So maybe we can use a donut chart, because a donut chart is a really good chart to compare and see what is the largest slice, what is the smallest one, and also compare each one of the values against each other. So let me click within the values, and also a donut chart can display the percentage. So I think it's a really interesting chart to use here. Insert, and then here in the pie chart, I can select the donut one like this. Okay. The last but not least important chart is about the sum of the quantity sold per product. Here we can use the most used chart in Excel, maybe that is the column chart. Insert, and then the column chart. If you have doubt in what is the best chart to use in Excel, maybe you can always keep with the column chart, because in my opinion, it's the standard one. It's the most simplest chart ever that you can use, the column chart. Now we can take all those charts and copy and paste here in the dashboard. But instead of copy and paste to duplicate those charts, we can cut and paste, because that way we can move the charts from the pivot table and place them in the dashboard. So I want to click here in any chart, and then I'm gonna press and hold the Control key. Select the second one, the third one, and the fourth one. I want to right click in any of those charts, and then I go to cut. Now I go to the dashboard, and then in any cell, right click and then paste the first option like this. Now we have all those charts that we need to use here. But let's go back to the pivot table one more time, because as we saw in the beginning of the video, we're gonna have the slicers, that is the little box with a couple of buttons that we can click, and then the dashboard is gonna be automatically updated for us, depends on the option that we selected. So with, let's say, each one of, let's click in any pivot table here, and then I can go to pivot table analyze, insert slicer. I want to use as my criteria in the slicer, maybe the region. Okay, it can be the region. And then I click OK. And as you can see, whenever I select a specific region, such as south, east, west, north, the values are going to be automatically updated for me. But just the pivot table corresponding to this slicer specifically are being automatically updated. So I need to connect the slicer with all those different pivot tables that I have. And to do this connection, I can right click in the slicer and go to report connections. I can select everything that I have. Pivot table, the first, the second, the third, and the fourth. Okay, and yeah, now we're done. Look, all those values are going to be automatically updated for us whenever I change here the options. And one more time, right click here and then cut, go to the dashboard and right click in a cell and then paste. Now we have all the options that we gonna use. Starting with the slicer, we can place just in the left corner here, in the top left corner. And I want to move it up maybe here to the row 9, the row number 9, like this. Another settings that we can change, instead of using the headers, I need to read it off the header just to maybe save some space. Right click here, and then I can go to slicer settings. And I don't want to see the header, and I also don't want to see item with no data, so I want to check this option, and then OK. Now we have a more clean look in the slicer itself. I can go now to the slicer option, and then instead of using just one column or split the options, each one of individually rows, I can use 2 columns, because we can have a different setting here, a different look. And we can also make those buttons a little thicker. I can click again in the slicer, and the height, maybe I can use 0.7, yeah, now it's perfect. And as you can see, the buttons are working. Whenever I click in any option, all those charts that we have are going to be automatically updated for us. But before we move on to a different chart, let's keep here with the slicer, because I think we can still make some changes. I don't want to use this specific layout and design that Excel gives me, so I can click in a slicer again and choose here a different option, such as an orange one, a yellow one, a blue one, a green one. But those are not really that great in my opinion, so I can create my own customized color, like this one that I did here. So as you can see, now it's much better. How can you do the same? You can click in the slicer, and then you can go to slicer, and then click in this down button here to see more styles. You're gonna click in new slicer style. So click there, okay? New slicer style. Now that you click, you're gonna actually open a window like this one that I have. You can start first giving your slicer a name. The one that I have here is just a whatever, you know, slicer style 1, it doesn't matter the name. And then the first option that I want to change is the whole slicer. Click in the first option and then go to format. Here, in the font, I want to use bold and put everything in 12. And also the color, I want to keep the white one, like this. Now I go to fill, and I want to use a different color, such this one that I'm using here, that is a kind of blue. You can go to more colors, and then you can use this exactly code that I'm using here to have access to the same color that I have here. So the code is 264653, okay? And then click OK, OK. And before you click OK one more time, let's go to the third option now, selected item with data, and then format. Here it's maybe more simple to do the things, because we only gonna need to use the size as 12 and the fill with this yellowish color. So more colors, and then you need to use this exactly code that I'm using here, E9C46A, and then OK. OK again. Now I want to use this option right here, hover it, selected item with data, and then format. Here I want to use as the font, the number 12 in the size, and the fill I want to use this reddish color. More colors, and then again copy this code right here, E76F 5.1, okay? And then okay, okay again. The last option, we can go to the second to bottom, that is hover it, unselected item with data, format. And then again, we're gonna use the same color as before, E7, 6F51. And then okay, and then go to the font and put everything in 12. And then okay, and then okay. Maybe when you click in OK, your slicer is not going to change at all. So maybe you think, oh, something is missing here. There's an error in my Excel, but not actually. Click in the slicer again and then go to slicer. And then you need to open all the slicers options that you have and select the one that you customize it. So this is how we can change the style. And now we have here, we're done with the slicer style. Which one of those options that we did before are responsible to a specific color here in the slicer, such as the background, the selected item with this yellowish color, and whenever you hover with the cursor of the mouse, you can see that the options change to this red color. This is what we did. Now let's move on to a different chart. That can be this one right here, the total quantity per product. Let me move this chart up, and as we did a couple of columns with a different size, we can use it in your favor. We can skip those columns and will not place any information here. So this is what I'm doing here. This specific chart, I want to move it until the row 11. So let me bring it up a little bit like this. Okay. And I want to move it to the right until the column N like this. Okay. Now let me click in this chart and I want to read off those gray options that I have. Because basically those gray options, as you can see, is actually a filter. But as I'm using here the slicer as a filter, I think I don't want to use the filters within the chart itself, but in the slicer. So this is why I'm reading off this information. I want to click in the chart and then I go to design, pivot chart analyze, and then field buttons. You can click here in the down arrow and go to hide all, or you can just click in the icon like this. And it's done. I'm gonna do it for all the charts that I have to read off this filter, because I don't want to use the filter for the reasons that I said before. Okay, now we're done. Going back to the previous chart, this one, let's start with the header. Instead of using total, I want to use total sold per product, or maybe here is the total quantity. Sorry, total quantity per product. Okay. Let me click in the chart itself, and then I go to format, shape outline, no outline, shape fill. I want to use exactly the same blue as we used it before. But maybe we're gonna need to click here more fill colors, because we're gonna need to set this color again before it be saved in the Excel. So the code that I want to use is 264653, and then okay, like this. With the chart selected, I can go again to design, and to the left, add chart elements. I can go to data labels. Here I want to use outside and. Instead of using the numbers to the left, I can put the numbers above each one of the columns. Let me go to the home tab, put everything in bold, and also change the font color to a white one like this. Now we're gonna continue to read it off some informations that I don't want to use anymore, such as the legend to the right, such as the grid line in the background, and such as the values to the left. Let's start from the left to the right. Read it off this option. The grid line I can select and then remove, and also the legend I can select and then delete it like this. Now let me right click within a column, and then I go to format data series. With this new window that's gonna pop out for me, I can change the gap width, maybe using 100, because that way, if we decrease this number, reduce, we can make the columns a little thicker. With the columns selected, yet I can go to effects and then shadow, and then choose the first option that I have. Now I can go to fill and line. As the border, I want to use a white line, but I'm not too thick, so I can change the width to maybe 0.5 like this. And as the color within the area, I want to use a solid fill with a grayish color, the same as we used it before, but let's click here more colors just to make sure we can create it again. And as the code, I want to use 2A and then 9D 8F. enter. So we're done. This is the first chart that we are using here in the dashboard. Now the second chart that we can create here maybe can be the area chart. And the area chart, I can place it just underneath the column chart. So I want to use the row 13 to start as the start point of this chart. And then I go to until the row 28, like this. Let me bring it to the right until the column as the reference. And let me move this chart here to the right and this one too. Okay. Now focus on this specific chart. Let me click in this chart. And then I can go to design. Here we can take advantage, let's say, using a specific design that Excel already have here. Maybe we can use this second to last option, style 10. And of course, we're gonna need to make some changes to match the style of all those previous charts that we have with this one right here, this current one. So let's go to the format, shape outline, no outline, and shape fill. Now we have the blue that we used before. Let's use it again, like this. Oh, something very important that I missed in the previous chart. Let me click out in the cell, and then I'm gonna click in the header of this chart. I want to use as the font 12 as the size of the font, okay? And also in the number, let me click in the number, right click, and then I go to format data label. Instead of having 2 decimal places in the number, I want to use as the category number and as the decimal places 0. Enter. Okay, now it's better. Let's go back to the chart that we are doing. As the header, now we're gonna have the total sold per month. Let's click out the chart and then again in the header. This one we're gonna use the size 12 as the size. And okay, now let's click within the area of the chart and then go to format data series. As the fill and line, I want to use first the border, solid line. I want to use a different color here. This time I want to use a Averageifs color, the same as we did for the slicer. But let's do it again. More colors. And then as the code is going to be E76F51 and then enter. Okay. Now let's go back here to the right and then fill, solid fill, gradient fill. As the gradient fill, as you can see, we're going to have here some colors that can change the saturation, let's say. So we can see different colors depends on the angle. But I want to change this. So I can click in any gradient stop that I have, and then I can read it off. I'm gonna just keep up with 2 different ones. The one in the middle, I'm gonna bring it to the left. The one in the right, I make sure it's 100% to the right. The one in the right, maybe we can use as the color, let's say, we can use a transparent background, or we can use the same blue as we are using to the background. So color, let's use the same blue as the background, like this. And as the color that we have here to the left, or the top color, we can use a Averageifs color, the same as we used before for the border. And we're basically done. Let me click here again in the legend, and then read it off this option. And we can go back to the numbers. So click over the number. And in the settings, you can choose label options, number, category, currency, decimal places, 0. And then close the panel and we're done. So as you can see, now it's much better, the visual of this specific chart in Excel. The third chart that we can customize here can be maybe the bar chart. So let me place this bar chart right here, bring it to the left like this, and bring it a little bit up. Maybe we can use this area. Let me already place here the done chart because we want to use it too. Maybe I can bring this chart a little bit down. Using now the bar chart, I can select everything and then go to format, read it off the outline, and keep the background as the blue that we used before. Let's go now to design, and to the left I can add chart element, use data label inside base, like this one. Okay, now I can read it off the grid lines, can read it off the legend to the right, and I can also read it off the values that I have in the bottom. Okay, I can, with everything selected, I can go to the home tab, put everything in white, everything in bold. The header, I can make sure it's in 12 as the size, and I can change I want to use here total sold per product. Okay. This previous header that I did here, let's change the text to uppercase. Total quantity sold per product. Okay. Now it's much better. Let me select this chart again, but this time I want to select the bar itself, right click, and then format data series. As the gap width, I want to reduce this number a bit. Maybe we can use here 50% to make it thicker. And I can go to the effects and choose a different shadow, like the first option that we have. And then I can go to the fill line as the border, solid line. And I want to use a white one and the width 0.5. As the fill, I want to use a solid fill in a different color. I want to use basically more colors to create a customized one. So custom, the code is going to be this time an orange color. That is F4 A261, enter. Okay, now as you can see, we have now a different layout. The numbers are a little bit not exactly in the middle of the chart, so we can select this area of the numbers, and then I can go to the last option, label options. In the number, I can go to category and choose currency, decimal places equal to 0, enter. And yeah, now it's much better with the alignment. Let me close this right panel. And as you can see, we are almost done here. Let's increase the zoom here a little bit so I can click in the view just to make it easier to see the data. Instead of using 100%, I can click here, zoom, and I can choose 115, enter, okay. And I can select a couple of cells in the background like this, and then I can go to the home tab and put everything with the blue that we did. Okay, now it's better. The last chart that we're gonna create here is the done chart. Let me click in the done chart, and then I can go to format, shape outline, no outline, shape fill, the same as the background. And now I go to design. I'm gonna choose here add chart element and then data label, show. That way we can see the percentage within each one of the slicers that we have. Let's go again to the home tab and put everything here with that white color, put everything in bold. And the header, I want to change, instead of using 14, I want to use 12 as the size. And here we're gonna have the average margin per product. Okay. Let's click within the slicers, not the number, but the slicers, and then go to format data series. Here to the right, I can choose donut hole size, use 65 maybe, to make the donut thicker. And we can also change here the angle of the first slicer. As you can see, we can rotate the slicer. Let me go to effects, shadow, the first option. And then as the fill line, I can choose border, solid line, and use a white color and the width equal to 1 maybe, or 0.5. Yeah. Let me go back to the series option because I want to separate the slicers from each other. And to do it, I need to select this option, donut explosion. I want to use 3%. Okay. Now I can go back to the fill line, fill, and before we change the colors of the slicers, because everything in the slicers are being selected, I need to select a specific slicer to change just the color of this specific slicer. And to do so, let me click the slicer here in any one of those, and then I can go to solid fill and choose maybe a blue color, the colors that we did. And then the second one can be an orange one, and then the next one can be a green one, and then a reddish one, and a yellowish one. Like this. I think we're done. Let me close this panel. And the last thing, I want to click out the chart, and then again, now in the hole here of the done chart, I want to click in these circles that we have in the corner, click hold and drag out to make sure we can increase the area of the done chart. Okay, now we're done. So this is how we can create a dashboard in Excel, and whenever you change here the options, as you can see, the entire dashboard is going to be automatically updated for you. Maybe the last thing that we can create is, I think this area is, maybe we are wasting some area here. Maybe we can put something, and this something can be the title of the dashboard. So I can go to Insert, Shapes, and then Rectangle. I can place this rectangle maybe right here, 1, 2 within the rectangle, and here we can have Sales, Enter, Report. Let me select everything within this rectangle, and Home tab, increase the font, maybe using 20, put everything in bold, change the background color to the blue one that we used before, and as the shape format, shape outline, no outline, like this. So yeah, now I think we're done. I hope you guys, this video can help you out, and if you have any questions or any suggestions to the next videos, let me know, comment down below, and I see you tomorrow as every day has a new video. I see you there.